Welcome to the Functional Medicine Radio Show with your host, Dr. Carri Drzyzga, known internationally as the Functional Medicine Doc. Dr. Carri is committed to helping patients find the root cause of their health problems and fixing the cause with natural treatments so they can feel normal again. Dr. Carri is the founder of Functional Medicine Ontario and is the author of the hit book, Reclaim Your Energy and Feel Normal Again. Please welcome your host, Dr. Carri Drzyzga.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Functional Medicine Radio Show, the only internet radio show dedicated to giving you real solutions to improve your health. Not only are they real solutions, but they're natural solutions as well, because as you know, the one and only true wealth you have is your health. I'm your host, Dr. Carri Drzyzga, the Functional Medicine Doc, and I'm committed to helping you find the root cause of your health problem, fix the cause with natural treatments so you can feel normal again and live your life to the fullest. Just a quick bit of housekeeping before I introduce our special guest. I'm happy to announce that I'm working on my next book. The title is Reclaim Your Digestive Health and Feel Normal Again, Fixing the Root Cause of Your GI Distress with Natural Treatments. Now, this book should be ready later this year, so keep an eye out for it. Okay, that's it for our housekeeping, so let's get started. My special guest today is Bridgit Danner. Now, Bridgit runs an online women's health community called Women's Wellness Collaborative. She has worked extensively in the fertility field and has worked with many professional women in helping them find health within their busy lives. Bridgit became passionate about women's health after her own postpartum health crisis. With the help of life coaching, holistic nutrition, functional medicine, and whole food cooking, she was able to recover from postpartum depression, epstein barr virus infection, and adrenal dysfunction. Bridgit loves to share the tools and skills she learned, along with the tools of other experts, to help women everywhere find the energy and balance they're craving. Thank you so much, Bridgit, for being my special guest today on this episode of the Functional Medicine Radio Show.
Thanks, Dr. Carri. I'm happy to be here and happy to have some listeners learn some stuff with me.
So one thing I wanted to talk about today, our show is going to be about women, for women, about cycles and stuff. So just a warning for any men that are listening. I wanted to dive in and talk about endometriosis and painful periods, because there's a lot of women out there of varying ages that are just suffering month after month, even day after day, in pain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, there's a few reasons for menstrual pain. I think the most common just has to do with nutrition and toxicity. So we'll get to some other cases later, but yeah, just if you're low in magnesium, a mineral needed for the uterus to cramp smoothly, that can be a factor. Just dehydration can be a factor. Too much inflammation from your diet and maybe not enough like omega-3s from fish, and that can be an issue. And then I think just toxicity. Every time we have our menstrual cycle, it's like a little detox. So some women really find just kind of detoxifying their diet and lifestyle helps quite a bit.
Okay, so really what I hear you saying, Bridgit, is that our listeners out there that are suffering with painful periods and endometriosis, they should have some hope.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think so many women are like, oh, well, I have these horrible cramps and that's just me. That's my cycle. No, I can tell you I used to have horrible cramps and I have barely no cramps like at all anymore. So yeah, a lot of cases can be resolved easily. Endometriosis is more complicated, but as the symptoms can still really be resolved, it might be a little more complicated than what we just mentioned. So could be adding in some turmeric, some high quality turmeric as an anti-inflammatory immune regulating supplement. Some of the medicinal mushrooms could be helpful because there is like an immune reaction going on with endometriosis. So that one I don't work with quite as extensively, but one of my colleagues, I really kind of run a platform business, and one of my colleagues is an endometriosis expert, and she's always teaching me little things more and more about endometriosis. And she was a very serious case. I think she had like 8 surgeries or something. It was, really debilitating, and she just said enough is enough, no more surgeries, and she slowly unwound her case so that now, she gets her period and, she just kind of doesn't even really, it doesn't really bother her, just like it shouldn't for any woman. So, if she can turn that case around, I know there's hope.
So, Bridgit, are the hormones involved when it comes to painful periods in endometriosis?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I will say in one case, I'm trying to think about that question. When you're a teenager, some teenage girls have very bad periods too. And some of that is like the really high levels of hormones, and the brain and the ovaries are trying to learn how to do things. But also a lot of teenagers are malnourished, right? But so I think in maybe in that case, kind of those extreme periods. But no, a normal amount of hormone shouldn't make for a painful period. And as far as endometriosis, they're still really trying to figure out why endometriosis happens. There's probably a genetic component. Some people say it's like backflow of uterine blood. Is an autoimmune disease. And so the hormones are playing a role in that they stimulate that endometrial tissue because it has receptors for the hormones. So it's like an active tissue that has found its way outside of your uterus, and it's doing stuff, it's causing problems. So the hormones are involved, but I wouldn't say they're to blame, so to speak.
Okay, so I wanted to talk a little bit about xenoestrogens. So for the listeners out there, you've probably heard there are a lot of chemicals that we are exposed to in our environment, whether it's through our diet or the things that we put on our skin or on our body or the stuff that we breathe in through different perfumes and whatnot. A lot of them mimic estrogen in the body. So, Bridgit, can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's really so true, and it's really kind of everywhere. But rather than just say, well, I give up, it's everywhere, there's a lot we can control. We can control, our cleaning products in our home. We can control the quality of food. We can, read labels and start to learn things. One thing to look for on a label is the word fragrance. That is always a xenoestrogen. And it looks so innocent, right? It's just the word fragrance or perfume or parfum, and it's in everything. But it is xenoestrogen as well. So using essential oils, we can talk a bit about why these are a problem, which is, and this is even still hard for me to picture, but the structure of some of these chemicals kind of looks to the body, acts in the body like a hormone. So it goes in and stimulates those receptors, and there's reaction. And with the endocrine system, there's always like a feedback loop, right? So if it senses that there is more hormones, it may make less hormone, but then there's still hormones circulating. If we can't detox that hormone out because there's too much of it, or because our body is, our detox pathways are in trouble, then now we're storing those toxins in fat. It can be kind of overstimulating in our cycle or understimulating, so it can cause estrogen dominance, like PCOS patterns. It can contribute to fibroids. So it's a big issue, and I just encourage women to just chip away at it in their own life. Getting rid of plastic Tupperware, looking at your deodorant, and finding an alternative. So just little by little. You can live a life like a normal person and still use deodorant and clean your home, but just what are you using is the question, and just learning what's best for you and what options are out there is important.
Now, you mentioned about estrogen dominance. So can you talk about some of the signs and symptoms that a person might have if they have estrogen dominance?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one could be like excess body weight, or trouble losing weight. The body's making more estrogen, and then that's kind of holding on to it. Other things could be like very heavy periods, or skipped cycles. So every month we have estrogen that grows our eggs, and then we should ovulate and release progesterone. So sometimes we don't ovulate, say we're in perimenopause or we're just under stress, and we don't ovulate. So we don't make progesterone to balance out that estrogen. So then it's going crazy. Sometimes we're just low progesterone because we're under stress, and progesterone is a precursor for some of our stress hormones. So there's different pictures on this estrogen dominance. Sometimes there's too much estrogen, like we talked about with these xenoestrogens. Sometimes there's not enough progesterone to balance it out because we're not ovulating or because we're under stress. And yeah, it can go to, heavy, that's why it can go to heavy bleeding or skipped cycles, or let's see some other things. Infertility. What are some other things we could say? You can fill me in. I think those are the big ones.
So one of the things that I've learned with all of the courses that I've taken and all the patients that have come in is that hormones are complicated. And we can't just rely on symptoms as a way to understand what's going on with the hormones. We have to also do testing, but we can't just rely on testing either. We have to kind of mesh, okay, how's the patient feeling? And what are their test results telling me to figure out, well, how do I treat this patient? Because as you said, estrogen can be too low, it can be too high. Progesterone can be too low or too high. And specifically with estrogen dominance, I say estrogen dominance can be true estrogen dominance or it can be fake estrogen dominance. And what I mean by that is your estrogen might be low, but you might have the symptoms of estrogen dominance because you have all of these fake estrogens, these xenoestrogens floating around in your body.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. It's not such a simple picture. I guess I'll mention one other symptom is PMS, one that people complain about a lot. And that's, I don't know if we can exactly say estrogen dominance, but again, if your progesterone is lower than it should be that second half, then the estrogen becomes the dominant hormone, and you don't have that PMS, or that progesterone to kind of smooth out that part of the cycle.
Now, Bridgit, what are some things that our listeners can start doing today to help with their hormones?
That's a good question. Well, some of them we already covered, so we'll just sum those up. Getting the toxins out, eating organic foods, hydrating, exercising, moving your cells is important. You don't have to overdo it. I mean, just taking a walk. Stress management is huge for hormones, and even, taking a walk outside in nature can really help reduce your stress. I'm a big fan of being outside. One thing, if you say have high cortisol, it can block your progesterone receptors. So there's another complicated hormone situation we can get ourselves into. And women, I don't know the studies on this, but I heard from Dr. Sarah Godfrey that women have a harder time getting out of fight or flight than men. And so we have to be more conscious of it, especially in this day and age that's like so stimulating. So, are you keyed up all day? It could be every day, or it could be, 5 days a week with work. It's really easy for us to get stuck there. And that's going to be, when we're making all this cortisol and trying to keep up with that, it's going to rob from our sex hormones. So, people have heard it before, but so we talked about walking, getting outside, being with friends, and preferably being with friends in ways that is healthy. If you've gotten into the habit of, well, I meet my girlfriends and that's great, but it's always for happy hour and I have 3 glasses of wine. Well, now that wine is screwing up your hormones, especially if you're in perimenopause, then you're really going to feel that screwing up your hormones. So yeah, being with friends in a healthy way, going for a hike, going to the sauna together. I love the sauna. It's a great way to detox, get those xenoestrogens out and get relaxed. So yeah, those are a few ways, getting up 10 minutes early to do a little meditation, taking a little time after your lunch to, read a book and unwind, taking time at the end of the day to take a bath or dry brush your skin, using essential oils to relax, all these kind of things that sound a bit decadent, they really should be part of our daily life, our daily decadence, so to speak. Because women kind of need that nurturing to keep our hormones flowing smoothly.
Okay, so let's go back to the topic of xenoestrogens. So you had mentioned that anything that has fragrance, is it? Anything that has fragrance in it is basically xenoestrogens. And if you're using anything that comes in plastic, food-wise, that's giving you xenoestrogens. What are some of the other common sources of xenoestrogens?
Well, canned food can't align with BPA often unless the label says otherwise. So looking for things that come in glass or another type of package, or making your beans from scratch rather than buying them in a can is preferred. Receipts have what they call BPS. It's just a cousin of BPA that everyone's heard of. So, opting for like a paperless, receipt, which we can do nowadays, or just saying, no, thanks, I don't need that receipt. Touching that is actually a source. Let me think of some others. Oh, so our beauty products are really big, and that's a source of fragrance, but also a source of some other endocrine disruptors. And it's pretty easy nowadays. Most people, either online or locally, have access to buy shampoos and stuff that are made differently. It can be a little trickier to look, find makeups that aren't fragranced in that, but it is possible. I go to a place locally and they have like kind of coconut oil based, lip color and that kind of thing. And so yeah, beyond the fragrance, there are other little additives to make a product sort of smooth and consistent and whatnot, that are an issue.
So one of the things, Bridgit, that I challenge myself to do, and my patients, and then the listeners today, is when you do your grocery shopping, if you need to get something that's in a package form, to try and get it in a glass jar.
Yes.
So if you're like buying ketchup, get it in the glass jar. If you're buying olive oil, get it in the glass jar. If you're buying peanut butter, get it in the glass jar. And just that in and of itself, first of all, is really hard to do. But you can find pretty much anything in a glass jar. And just that one thing will really help limit your exposure to these toxins, these harmful estrogenic toxins.
Yeah, it's funny. It's like there's always a new little tip, and like you just gave me one. Like I'm pretty good about finding glass in some things, but I've never really thought, okay, my ketchup and my peanut butter, that's never really clicked with me that I need to find that in glass. So we're always learning little new things. One thing I learned as I was studying toxins was carpet cleaners can have really nasty chemicals in them. And we have a carpet cleaning machine at our house because we have like a white carpet, which is a bad idea. So I was like, oh, I should check my carpet cleaner. And of course, it's the horrible kind. I thought, oh my gosh, how am I going to find natural carpet cleaner? So I go to my natural food store. It's like a mile away, and it has natural carpet cleaner there. So sometimes it's just like sparking that awareness because, there's so many products, and sometimes we just like, it doesn't sink in like, oh, I should check this one, or maybe I can buy my ketchup in a glass jar. So yeah, we just slowly learn like that.
Exactly. You're right. A lot of it is just awareness. And you had brought up the point about food that comes in a can, that the majority of the time that can is lined with a little bit of plastic, and that's where these estrogenic toxins come from. So specifically to start keeping your eye looking for cans that are BPA free.
Yes. So Eden Organics is a brand. Native Forest is a brand that like doesn't have the BPA. So they can line it with like a ceramic, I think it is. But I think Eden Organics, I looked them up. I'm not promoting them. I don't even, I just buy some stuff from them. But they even, did this a while ago, before BPA became in the public awareness, because in Europe, they don't have these BPA lined cans, I guess. And they were just, being conscious, and they switched to a different kind of can sooner. And their canned food is more expensive, I'll be honest. But they do, you're getting something from that. They also do something kind of cool, which is they cook their beans with kombu. So, it's more digestible for you and it has some more nutrients. So I think that's pretty cool.
Okay, so we've been talking about how can we limit our exposures to these xenoestrogens. So avoiding plastics, not touching these thermal paper receipts, avoiding anything with a fragrance or perfume in it, buying more natural skin care products and makeup and whatnot. So let's kind of switch gears and talk about, okay, how do we get these xenoestrogens out of our body? Because we all have a certain amount of it. Is there a way nutritionally, are there certain foods that are the best when it comes to grabbing and taking these xenoestrogens out of the body?
That's a great question. So I'll weigh in, Carrie, and then you're welcome to weigh in too, because I know you have plenty of your own expertise. So I would say the two systems, well, let's see, there's a few systems to support, and one would be the liver. And the liver does a lot of the early breakdown of toxins. And mostly it just needs a lot of nutrition to do its job. So sometimes I think people think about detoxing as like starving yourself or like drinking juice for a few days. But also it's just about nourishing the body. And the liver needs a lot of nutrition. And some foods that are good for it are like the brassicas, like broccoli and Brussels sprouts. And then I don't know what family this is called, but onion and garlic, those foods are good too. Eggs are good if you tolerate eggs. Liver is good if you can, if you can tolerate eating that. Liver for liver. Let's see, lemon is nice for detox, especially like, in the morning. Greens are definitely good for detox, whether it's, leafy greens or greens powder or green juice. So yeah, that's one system to support. Another is the gut, and sometimes that gets forgotten. So once we break down toxins, we have to remove them. And a lot of that activity happens in the gut. So we need to be moving our bowels and not have our bowels irritated. And I think we're just at the tip of understanding all the complexities of the gut environment and what is exactly happening there. But we know that having a wide variety of fibrous foods is good for the gut. So all those different bacteria in there, we want as much variety as possible. So that means variety in our diet too, and not just choosing the same like 3 vegetables at the grocery store every week, but really like, buying a leek, or I'm just learning to cook fennel. So having lots of fibers is one great way to treat your gut well and help for detox. You can get into fermented foods, having kombucha or making your own, having kimchi and sauerkraut that's raw. I just bought these like fermented little carrots that are so delicious. So that's another good way to support the gut. You can also, just take probiotic supplement. That's a whole different conversation, but that can be supportive. And then besides that, I would say exercising and sweating are a good way to detox too. And we can do the sauna, or we can, just kind of get our body moving and get a little bit of sweat going. Laying in the sun is actually good for detox, because the vitamin D is good for supporting your liver. So there's lots of pleasant ways to support detox.
Yeah, and I concur with everything that you said there, with supporting the liver, supporting the gut with lots of fibrous foods, and then getting out and somehow sweating. So as you said, it could be exercise, it could be sauna. However you want to do it, just do it, because we all are exposed to chemicals day in and day out, and there's that load of toxins that our bodies have to deal with in some way, shape, or form. And it always, Bridget, it always kind of seems to go back to the basic things, what you put in your body, how you eat, your diet, exercise, stress management, making sure you're getting some vitamin R, rest, relaxation, recreation. So all of that still applies to hormones.
Yeah, very much. I mean, our hormone system is very delicate, and it's also kind of like the first one to go when we aren't doing those foundational things. It's almost like it's not an extra system, but it's the one that we don't need to survive, right? We need it to reproduce, but we don't need it to survive. So often our cycle will be the first thing, or one of the first things to tell us that something isn't right. So it's important not to ignore the signs and symptoms that are coming. If you're spotting, or you're having crazy heavy periods, or you're getting a migraine every time you have your period, these are good things to pay attention to.
Okay, so Bridget, we're starting to run low on time. Is there anything else that you think is important for our listeners to know when it comes to hormones?
Let's see here. Well, I guess I would say that, for the sake of hope we talked about earlier, there are a lot of things you can do to learn about your cycle and to be treated, to treat your cycle. You can start to get to know your cycle better. There's something called basal body temperature charting that you can do to see how your hormones are affecting your body temperature, because they're going to do that in a predictable way. And if they don't, then something's off. So they make monitors now for that too. We're getting a little more technologically advanced for like natural birth control options. So I know that's a big question for women. Well, what about this birth control? What are my options? And there are more options out there now. And some of that hormonal birth control is really affecting women as well. I mean, it's a toxin. It depletes nutrients. It's hard on the liver. Often coming off of it is difficult. If you're trying to get pregnant after you come off of it, there could be a long delay. So I guess we'll just touch on that briefly. But just, if I would say if you're using birth control to control symptoms, there is hope. And if you're feeling concerned about your chemical or, hormonal birth control, there are more options out there now to learn about.
Okay, so Bridget, how can our listeners find out more about you and what you do?
Yeah, thanks. So I have a couple things. One is a little more time sensitive, so to speak. I'm hosting an online summit April 11th to 18th, 2016, and it's all about hormones, and there are 35 plus lectures, and it's free. So you can sign up for that at womenswellnesssummit.com. And then on the more long term, we run a community called Women's Wellness Collaborative with blogs and podcasts and in resources. We do webinars, and that is the link is my name, which is bridgitdanner.com.
So for our listeners out there, I'll make sure that those links are in the podcast notes at drcarri.com so that you can easily find those resources that Bridget mentioned. Bridget, I'm really excited for you and your upcoming summit. I know that's going to be really interesting.
Thank you. Yeah, we hope you attend. I know you know a lot, but maybe we'll teach you one thing.
I'm sure there's always something to learn. All right, that wraps up this very special episode of the Functional Medicine Radio Show with Bridgit Danner. And I want to thank you, our listeners, for tuning in today. And I'd like to invite you back next week for another episode of the Functional Medicine Radio Show. As always, I'm your host, Dr. Carri Drzyzga, the Functional Medicine Doc. Have a great week, everyone.
You've been listening to the Functional Medicine Radio Show with your host, Dr. Carri Drzyzga, known internationally as the Functional Medicine Doc. Dr. Carri is committed to helping patients find the root cause of their health problems and fixing the cause with natural treatments so they can feel normal again. Dr. Carri is the founder of Functional Medicine Ontario and is the author of the hit book, Reclaim Your Energy and Feel Normal Again. Please tell your friends about the Functional Medicine Radio Show, and we'll see you next week with more from Dr. Carri.